Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Jets. What is going on? I am your host, Matt O'Leary. Today, we have a few things that I wanted to get into. The New York Jets kind of hinting at their quarterback preference if they decide to take one in the NFL draft. And Ben Johnson speaks on his former coach, or someone who was on his coaching staff, might be a better way of putting it, Tanner Engstrand. And of course, we will get into your voicemail. So, according to Jordan Schultz, the New York Jets met with Jalen Milroe for the now second time. This most recent time was before his pro day. At the Combine, he had a workout with the New York Jets. The Jets quarterback coach was in attendance for that, and I just find this very interesting. So, in this quarterback class, it feels like the Jets have been linked to not necessarily as much the top two guys because they're not really in a spot to land either of them, but there's been some Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe buzz. I'm nervous, and I made this stance pretty clear, about where you draft both of those guys. I think, for me, Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart are very clearly not first-round quarterbacks because there's a lot of project and projecting there. But there's a chance that both of those guys can go first or second round. Now, if I was guessing today, I think Cam Ward goes number 1 overall. I think Shedeur Sanders goes to the Giants at number 3 overall. And then it's really a coin flip if we see someone else go, whether it be Milroe or Jackson Dart, in the back half of the first round, whether that's, a team trading up into the back half of the first round to draft a quarterback or whatever. Now, for Jalen Milroe, which I wanted to focus on in this episode, not as much into Jackson Dart, there's something that makes sense with the Jets' interest in Jalen Milroe. So stylistically, very similar quarterback to what Justin Fields will be for the New York Jets. So it's not exactly like they would have to completely change their offense to go from Justin Fields or whoever is starting to Jalen Milroe. The offense that Tanner Engstrand and company would be building you'd imagine that it would fit both skill sets of Justin Fields and Jalen Milroe. Now, I think for me, some issues for Jalen Milroe are the accuracy concerns, and I think he struggles reading defenses right now. That's not to say that the guy stinks and he has no chance at working out at the next level. That's not really fair to say about any prospect in particular. But I think where his flaws are is going to need some serious seasoning. And if the Jets spend a first or second round pick on Jalen Milroe, I think the expectation would be for him to play sooner rather than later. Let's say the Jets trade into the back half of the first round to draft Jalen Milroe, or even just sit and stay at pick number 42 and take Jalen Milroe. I can picture it now, the stats that are getting tweeted out from the beat at training camp, or the first time Justin Fields doesn't have a great day at training camp, the rumblings of, is Jalen Milroe going to steal the job out from under him, are going to get going. And there's a lot to like for a Milroe in particular with his athleticism. That's, reason why you like Justin Fields. They're both very athletic quarterbacks, but I don't think Jalen Milroe is a guy who can really play for you in year 1, maybe year 2, but this is a long-term developmental project. And for where I think you'd have to take him in the top 2 rounds, I don't know if that's worth the investment. Now, if you're saying, all right, you can get him at 72 or, wherever the Jets are picking in the third round, a little bit different, right? Like not that same level of expectation that comes with a first round pick quarterback or even a second round pick quarterback, a guy, who's a mid round pick, we'll say rounds 3 to 5, a lot less pressure on him to come in and immediately produce. And it's not even specifically about my stance on this with Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart. It's not about those guys individually. It's more so about the the appearance that comes with that, or the expectation that comes with being a top 50 draft pick. And I don't think that's fair for either of those guys. I think for best case scenario for them is that they sit in a scenario where there's a veteran quarterback in place, and maybe a year plus down the line, they get their opportunity. I guess you can argue with Justin Fields, that's how it could happen, right? Like, he's obviously paid on a 2-year, $30 million contract. He's going to be here the next couple of years. But beyond that, we don't know if he's the answer or not. So theoretically, you can go, we're going to have Jalen Milroe sit behind Justin Fields for 2 years, and then he'll be ready to take over in 2027. I guess you can go that route. And it depends on how much you at home like Jalen Milroe as a prospect, I guess, right? Like, are you betting on that athletic upside? Are you going to do that in the, first or second round, or even, I guess, maybe makes it to the third round? I don't know. It's really up to you. And a big reason too why I'm on the stance that, if you take a swing on the quarterback, I guess so be it. But I am okay with waiting is because this roster still needs a lot of work. And I think with the Jets' first 3 picks in the draft, they need, especially at 7, they need a big time impact player in the first round. And their round 2 and round 3 picks are going to have to play a lot this year. I'm not going to say they got to find a star in the third round. Like that's unfair and completely unrealistic, but I don't think it's unreasonable to go, you need to find someone who could be a starter for you in the second round, and you need your round 3 guy to be a good contributor for you. And what is that? Is that at, for all 3 of those spots? Right tackle, tight end, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, strong safety, interior defensive line. I just listed off, a bunch of needs that you could argue that the Jets still need to fill on this roster going into the NFL draft. And there's only going to be so many picks where you'll have that opportunity. Like, yes, you have 2 5th-rounders and 2 6th-rounders, but with those picks, you're not really expecting anyone to come in from that and be an immediate day 1 impact guy. It would be great. Sure, there's outlier situations to that. I hope they find a Michael Carter II who ended up starting as a rookie, as a day 3 pick, and was a good starter for this Jets team, and got a second contract. That would be great, but I don't think that's a fair or reasonable expectation. And then it's basically the argument of, do you want to use one of your picks in the first 3 rounds on a developmental quarterback, or do you want to fill out the rest of the roster? And my stance is I would prefer to fill out the rest of the roster before getting to the point where you're taking your quarterback. That's just me. So maybe the Jets do like Jalen Milroe. It's really smokescreen season right now. But if you're reading the tea leaves and trying to put some things together, Milroe might make more sense than Jackson Dart because of the system that the Jets are going to put in place. And speaking of the system, let's talk some Tanner Engstrand. So you had Ben Johnson, who was the offensive coordinator in Detroit that Tanner Engstrand worked under, had some really high praise for his quarterback, for his former passing game coordinator, and him taking over as an offensive coordinator. Let's listen to the quotes from Ben Johnson on Tanner Engstrand.
So Tanner, it poised to be an offensive coordinator for the first time in the National Football League. He was your passing game coordinator. Can you talk about the last few years with him and his development?
Man, he was an integral part of what we were doing there. I got to know him. It was before Dan even took the job there in Detroit. I think Tanner came on as a quality control there the last year of Patricia, and he had a similar trajectory as I did. We just kind of climbed the ladder the same way, starting low and then tight end position and a passing game coordinator role. And so he and I have a shared experience, a shared bond that way. I leaned heavily into him. The last 2 seasons, we had Johnny Morton, who's now in Detroit as a coordinator, the first year that I was calling it. And Tanner was the tight ends coach. And and we ended up moving him to passing game coordinator, effectively taking over for Johnny Moe, and he is completely ready for this next challenge. He's called plays in his past, and so I think each and every game when I was calling it, he was doing the same thing in his own head.
Yeah,
so,
what's that like, taking on those responsibilities for the first time, as far as like in a game that you're going to be the guy week in, week out?
Yeah, no, I think he's very similar to AG. He's an excellent communicator. He'll do a great job in front of the room with the players. I think where Tanner's really going to excel is he's been able to really thrive in these game management spots. So he understands the situation in the game. What do we need yardage-wise to get into field position, whether it's a field goal or an attempt to score a touchdown. And so he's very advanced in that area. And so quick thinker. And like I said, he was huge impact on our process over the last couple of years.
Now, I really like that quote from Ben Johnson on Tanner Engstrand. And why Tanner Engstrand excites me is because there's a lot of people who are fans of this team wanted Ben Johnson as the head coach because of the offensive prowess that he has and the kind of offense he built with the Detroit Lions. He was highly coveted and ends up with the Chicago Bears. And we just heard this guy wax poetic about the person the New York Jets hired in Tanner Engstrand to run the show as the offensive coordinator. I know that he hasn't been an offensive coordinator at the NFL level before, but as Ben Johnson says, he's called plays before, which I think will give him a leg up on some other first-time coordinators. And I just frankly think that he's ready for that next step in his career. We've seen this from guys. And, you know, there's always risk when you hire someone who's doing something for the first time at a position at this level, right? But from a qualified perspective, I don't know what else he could have possibly done before getting the nod to be an offensive coordinator, right? Like every single offensive coordinator in this league has at one point become a first-time offensive coordinator. And I think his resume as a play caller at the college level and as a pass game coordinator the last couple of years in Detroit, I think are quality, right? Like it's not Ben Johnson was running the whole show, and I don't want to minimize the Ben Johnson role in the Detroit Lions offense. Like obviously as a coordinator, he had a huge part in what they're doing, but it's not like Tanner Engstrand was just sitting there, you know, twiddling his thumbs, waiting for Ben Johnson to do something, and he didn't really do anything. He was very big on the installation process. He communicated with the wide receivers and the quarterbacks and helped with the install of the offense. Jared Goff has spoke glowingly about him over the last couple of years, and, you know, they built a very successful unit. And I'm optimistic about what Tanner Engstrand can do, especially when you look at just how boring and stagnant the Jets offense has been the last 2 years under Nathaniel Hackett. I know they made the play calling change under Jeff Ulbrich this year, and there were some okay signs from Todd Downing. I thought, you know, he looked better than what Nathaniel Hackett did, but still offense, you know, especially with the quarterback change too, going from Aaron Rodgers to Justin Fields, offense is going to look really different. So let's see how he can do being creative with a quarterback who can use his legs and has that as a weapon. Is Breece Hall a massive passing target in this offense? I think he should be. The Lions use Jahmyr Gibbs that way. I would like to see them utilize him in the passing attack. What do they do at the tight end position? Can they get a lot out of a rookie tight end? How about the wide receivers outside of Garrett Wilson? Clearly, there might be a skill issue in that room outside of Garrett, but can you work and have a successful offense with the pieces that you have? And for me, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, the Jets have the recipe to be a top 10 offense in the league. I think that is completely unrealistic expectations, but some things that would really, I think, help you feel pretty good about him after year one is if Justin Fields looks like a capable NFL starter, so we'll call him league average, and the Jets are operating somewhere close to the middle of the pack offensively, that would be a huge win for a team that is normally bottom 5 in the league offensively year over year over year and can never get to 30 points. That's a major problem for this team. Offense was a big issue. I know the defense stunk last year too. Like, I don't want to give them a pass, but they just frankly were not good enough offensively. They have the makings of a really good offensive line. They might add another piece, at 7th overall with Armand Membu as a player we've talked a lot about, or you can go Tyler Warren or, add whoever your favorite first round draft pick is. But I think there's a chance that this is a guy who can, do something at this level as a play caller. I'm genuinely excited about what Tanner Engstrand could bring. And I love those comments from Ben Johnson and wanted to share those with you. All right, let's get to your voicemails. Max from New Jersey gets us started.
Hi, this is Max calling in from New Jersey, and I have a very interesting question. So, I was watching highlights of Tyler Shuck, I feel like it could be a really good late day 2 quarterback. A lot of mock drafts I see has Jackson Dart's go number 7. Guys, it is not going to happen. Justin Fields is our quarterback, but I feel like an interesting option is to take Tyler Shuck late day 2. He could be a very good backup quarterback for the New York Jets. What I really like about this guy, Tyler Shuck, he's a very accurate deep ball passer. He's a very accurate passer. And a lot of the Jets fans, they disagree. We have Justin Fields. I want Justin Fields to succeed on the New York Jets. I want him to succeed. I feel like Tyler Shuck could be a really good backup quarterback, and I feel like he could be a starter. I feel like if Justin Fields isn't panning out, I wouldn't mind Tyler Shuck being our starting quarterback in 2026 if Justin Fields is not panning out this year. I feel like this year needs to be an evaluation year for Justin Fields, and if Justin Fields isn't panning out, we could start Tyler Shuck. I like him because, he's a very accurate deep ball passer. I was watching highlights of him. He is a really accurate deep ball, and he's a very accurate passer. A big con is he's 25 years old, which is older for a starting quarterback, but I don't think it really matters. Jane Daniel was 25 when he was drafted. Bo Nix was 25 when he was drafted, and both are top-end NFL quarterbacks. I feel like, Tyler Shuck could be a good quarterback, and I feel like everyone wants Jackson Dart from this class, but it's not going to happen, guys. You're not going to waste a number 7 pick on Jackson Dart when we have Justin Fields. I think it's a mistake that the Jets are making if they take Dart. Instead, I feel like they should take Tyler Shuck late day 2, round 3, round 4. What's your thoughts on this, and go Jets?
So I kind of just mentioned in my open how I don't really love the idea of taking a quarterback this year. Tyler Shuck is someone that I feel like is a polarizing prospect because he played college football for a really, really long time. His first year was in 2018 back in Oregon, right? He started his first 3 years were at Oregon. He's been in college football so long, he was Justin Herbert's backup. 3 years in Oregon, 3 years at Texas Tech, 1 year at Louisville. This was the first time he's played more than 7 games in a season. Injuries have been a concern for him in his career. He's gotten banged up a decent amount. He put up pretty good numbers this year. I'm not going to lie, 62.7 completion percentage, 266 yards a game, 23 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. He has the prototypical size at 6'5", 225. Doesn't give you a ton as a rusher, but is capable. At Texas Tech, he was used his legs significantly more this past year. Now the sacks are part of this, but 42 rushing attempts for 19 yards. He did have 1 rushing touchdown. He had 4 rushing touchdowns in 2022 in 7 games, but is an older prospect. I just don't really know how much more is left in the tank for him to take another step. Can he come in and be a serviceable backup spot starter? That's kind of what I see him as at the next level, but who knows? Maybe there is more left in the tank for him. As he's 25, going to be 26 at the beginning of the season. Let's go to Jay from Jersey calling in next.
Hey, what's up, Matt? Jay from Jersey. I actually called in last week about talking more so about why Harold Fannin isn't talked about as much as a tight end prospect in this year's draft as like a second round guy for us to grab. But anyway, I'm actually calling again, so you don't have to play the old one. Just play this one. I saw Rich Cimini's thing saying that the Jets could be open to drafting Genty at 7, which I've stated earlier in the, to possibly trade Breece Hall and get your elite, running back at 7 there. And I think I understand where you came from last time when you said it's kind of creating a hole to create a hole. But at the same time, if you did do that, if you drafted Genty at 7 and say you trade Breece Hall to where Genty was most likely going to be drafted, say the Raiders or wherever, or who we'll use the Raiders, for instance, and get their, tight end too. I think that's really the team it would make the most sense for, is if, say, before the draft even, Breece goes there to the Raiders and we get like Michael Mayer back. That would kind of fill a whole tight end there because, Mayer was a stud in college. And then obviously Browers being on the Raiders too kind of takes up some, almost all the targets there. But just interesting. I wonder if they would do this. I'm still leaning for them going Tyler Warren, but I am curious if they did get Genty, what are some other teams where we could trade Breece, in return to possibly, player for player, get a tight end instead, maybe a late round pick back or whatever and a tight end or whoever, but. What are some other teams you think that possibility works out for? Just curious on your thoughts. And like I said, I'm not, banging the table here for them to draft a running back at 7. I'm just saying, if that were to happen, if that's where they're going to go, where could we trade Breece for, a solid player in return at the tight end position? Let's hear what you have to say, man. Go Jets.
Thank you for the call. Couple thoughts. I think if you were to trade Breece Hall, again, that's not my preference, and you're looking to get a Michael Mayer back, who's a tight end too. I think it would be like a 3rd round pick and Michael Mayer or something like that. Because what is Breece's value? He was drafted in the 2nd round. He's a running back. The last big running back trade we saw was Christian McCaffrey, which was, I believe, like a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round pick. So it was a collection of mid-round picks. So obviously Christian McCaffrey in Carolina, better player so far than what Breece Hall has been with the Jets. A 3rd, are we talking about 2 mid-round picks for Breece, and instead it's a 3rd and a player, or 3rd, a player, and a pick swap? I feel like we're squabbling, but the Raiders make sense if you're just looking for teams where you can do that and maybe return a player. So I would say the Raiders are a team that could be in on a running back. The Cowboys, right? Dallas doesn't really have a great running back in there right now. I don't know if they would trade their number 1 guy, but Luke Schoonmaker is their number 2, a 2nd round pick from a couple of years ago. The Broncos could probably use a running back for their young quarterback. We're talking like Adam Trotman, which I know that doesn't really move the needle a ton, but I think it would be a draft pick and then like a tight end 2 kind of guy. The one that I think has the best upside is Mayer, like you said. But if you're looking for other places that maybe would be in on a Breece Hall, the Raiders, Cowboys, Broncos tend to stand out, unless what contending team at the end of the 1st round, not that necessarily the Jets are getting a 1st round pick for Breece Hall, but is there a team that would be looking to trade for a running back that views themselves as like a real true contender? Would Kansas City do it? I don't know. I don't know if they'd be able to swing that. The Eagles obviously have their guy in Saquon Barkley. Washington, I don't know. Maybe Washington. There's interesting options, but if I had to guess, I'm just thinking of teams that could potentially be trading up for a running back, and the Cowboys just make a crap load of sense to me. That's something that it feels like they like to do. Vinny from Merrick is next. He wants to talk about, speaking of trades, trading back in the draft.
Yo, Matt, what's up? It's Vinny from Merrick. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of trading back, which I'm not opposed to, but I don't absolutely in love with it. And I don't think it's going to happen, excuse me. So the whole idea of trading back, getting Kyle Pitts, who, by the way, absolutely
not for me.
Dog crap. Don't want him. Don't need him. Kick him to the curb. he basically destroyed the reputation of any first-round tight end, and Brock Bowers is trying to reignite that fire, trying to make it work it for first-round tight ends. Very different players, I understand that. But keep Kyle Pitts and the Falcons away from me. However, I also don't see any aspect of the Jets completely trading out of the first round, because this is Muji and Glenn's first draft. I think it's kind of an idea of making a statement of this is their draft. They're going to draft a player of their company and what they want. So I think they're gonna stay put where they are. They like the first round. They're gonna get a great player, hopefully. Go Jets.
Yeah, it's trading back is going to be hard in this draft unless someone wants to come up for a very specific player. I'm with you. I wouldn't do that with Kyle Pitts. It just don't think it makes sense for this team. Apparently, the Falcons want Jalen Walker and want to jump in front of the Saints and the Panthers. That's where that rumor began. But if I had to bet on it, I think the most likely scenario is that they're sticking and picking. They traded back one pick a year ago. I think Muji and Aaron Glenn are going to come in and want to get their guy. And if I was putting odds on it, I think Armand Membu and Tyler Warren are the two most likely players to come off the board to the New York Jets at pick number 7. Again, just a guess. Who knows? Maybe they surprise and go a different direction, but that's kind of where my head's at right now with what the Jets will do in the NFL draft. Sure, every team, every fan base of every team every year goes, I want to trade back and get more capital, but it's hard. It doesn't, it only happens a couple times in the round. So, sure, anything's possible, but I would think right now it's most likely going to be they stay at 7 and Armand Membu or Tyler Warren's the pick. We'll close with Peter from the beautiful Hudson Valley.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter calling from up in the rainy, wet, cold second winter coming here of the Hudson Valley, which spring would just stay at this point. Calling in on this late Monday. Just saw your great podcast with Richie from Jets Media.
Thank you.
Talking about the draft and free agency and everything so far. And since it is Monday, figured we would hash it up with another mock draft. I've been using PFSN, or Pro Football Sports Network, for their mocks. I don't think they rank players the same as PFF, unfortunately, but they do seem to have the ability to allow for, realistic trades that, seem to be propagating in there. So one that happened in this particular case when I did a mock draft earlier was that the Cowboys wanted to trade up from 12 to 7 to get Ginty, because Ginty was still available. And, of course, I don't want to see Breece Hall traded away, no matter what. I'd like to see him stay with the Jets. But in this case, we traded back to 12, and we picked up pick 44 as well.
Okay.
And surprisingly, Armand Membu was still available. I don't think realistically that would happen, but since he was, we took him. And then at 42, took Kenneth Grant. So in this mock draft, I'm showing that the Jets can take the trenches first, but then still get a lot of the players that they need after that, at a lot of positions that they need. So after they took Membu and Grant, at 44, Jaden Higgins was available, so took him as your next wide receiver.
Smart.
73, Gunnar Helm, tight end, so you fill in there. At 110, I took Billy Bowman, the safety out of Oklahoma. 145, legacy pick, R.J. Mickens was there, even though I think technically he's rated a lot lower in PFF's grades, but, since he was there, he might as well. 162, pipeline player, Miles Frazier, the guard/tackle out of LSU, gives us some flexibility. 174, I think this was another pick we picked up from Dallas, Kobe King, linebacker out of Penn State. Okay. One of my favorites, 186, Tyler Batty, the edge out of BYU. And then the very last pick, going back to tight end, Jackson Hawes, the tight end out of Georgia Tech. I know he's a favorite of yours because of his blocking ability.
Yep.
Obviously, with that last pick, you could take a Ryan Fitzgerald, a kicker, or whoever you want. Maybe even flop those two picks around. Maybe Hawes is taken first and then Batty last. But I think this is a really good look at what could really fill in the draft, fill in the roster for this Jets team. 10 good solid picks, the first 4 or 5 of which certainly could be all starters. So that's what I wanted to call in about this week. Again, Membu and Grant leading the draft, filling the trenches, but we still get Higgins, Helm, Bowman at safety, and Mickens, and there's a lot of other guys still to fill in. So let me know your thoughts on that, and as always, go Jets.
Yeah, I really like that mock draft a lot. And I know I kind of just finished saying, I don't know if they're going to trade back, but clearly, like if they do, there's a major benefit to that by picking up an additional second round pick so that you could try to fill your needs on the trenches. So at right tackle, interior defensive line, and then at wide receiver. If that's the path, right, and they move back and they're still able to get Membu and they're able to get, someone who I think is one of the best run stopping interior defensive linemen in the draft, and then add a wide receiver who I think has wide receiver 2 upside. I don't know how you could honestly ask for any better. I don't think you can, honestly. So for me, I think you nailed it, Peter. I really do. And then, you get a tight end in Jackson Hawes on day 3 that really impacts the run game, and you could potentially take a kicker there, and that's another starter. I know people, have their feelings on whether or not you should or shouldn't take a kicker in the NFL draft, but I think that's a really solid plan that you put in place because of the number of holes that you filled. And I think this comes full circle now by what I kind of said at the beginning of the show, where this is a draft where I think the Jets need to fill holes rather than take a flyer on a developmental quarterback, especially one early in this draft. So good stuff, guys. I appreciate it. That'll do it for me in this episode. Once again, I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.